What's going on, guys? Jackson here from Vendetta Sports Media, and welcome to another episode of Court is in Session. As always, if you're watching us on YouTube and you enjoy the podcast, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you could be notified whenever a new episode of the podcast drops. Joining me in the courtroom today, I have one of Vendetta's own. We're breaking away. We had last week, we had a great guest in Shea Media, someone from outside of Vendetta Sports Media, but we're bringing it back in with a Vendetta Sports Media guest. I've got James Herrick with me. He is an intern of ours, but he's been doing some great stuff on the YouTube, especially with USC, the USC stuff, or the UFC, excuse me,
You're good.
USC. I got sports still. I got other sports still on the mind. College football's right around the corner, and they just made their bid to join another big conference and lead the
Big
Pac-12.
news.
So
Big news
that
with
is
the
big news.
USC.
That is big news with USC. But UFC, great UFC content. He's been putting out articles and videos along with Garrett. But James, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on. I listened to the first couple episodes, really enjoyed the podcast, so it's nice to be on. I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you agreeing to come on. I know we were going to try to meet up last week, but it just couldn't work out. I had a bunch of stuff going on here, but happy
All
that
good.
we are
All good.
finally able to sit down and get the pod out this week. So, yeah, James, the reason why I really wanted to bring you on first off is just to kind of let everyone at Vendetta, the listeners that we have here for Court is in Session, to kind of get to know you a little bit better. So, just explain a little bit what you do here at the company. I know you do other things besides UFC, but you could talk about the UFC content that you're doing, and just how you came across Vendetta Sports Media, how you came to be interning with us.
Yeah. So I'll start off with the second part of that because I was looking for internships and I came across Vendetta on Chegg. And the number one thing that stood out to me was how much creative control there was. You pretty much get to write about what you like within reason. You obviously have to do some things with some news posts, but for a lot, you have a lot of creative control. And went on the website and I saw a UFC tab. So I was like, all right, we're going to that's my lane. So that's the lane I'm gonna fill. And I came in, and UFC is obviously my number one. So started doing UFC articles. I work a lot with Garrett, and he's been great. He selected me in the intern draft. So that was
I remember when the intern draft was going on, and I saw your video, and Garrett's pick was coming up, and I was like, instantly, I was thinking that's who he's gonna pick. He's obviously gonna get the UFC guy because that's who he's gonna go with more. My intern, unfortunately, has left.
Yeah. So and then once I came on, I started doing some UFC stuff. I work a lot with Garrett, coming up with post ideas. We do some previews for the events, and then I started doing some YouTube content. I did a film study on Israel Adesanya. I'm looking to do a couple more of those in the future. And then from there, I'm not just UFC. I'm here on the NBA podcast. I have some NBA knowledge. Big NFL, college football fan too. So I'm a UFC guy at heart, and that's my number one. But I dabble in quite a few other sports as well.
Yeah, definitely go check out the breakdown, by the way, that James did. It was really great. Love just the slowing it down, and he's showing you different angles and showing at different speeds of what he's talking about. I'm not a big I like the UFC. I'm just not very knowledgeable about it. So don't expect a lot of technical jargon while I'm explaining. To go watch it. But if you are just a lover of sports like I am, then you should definitely go watch it, especially if you like a sport that involves men and women beating the absolute heck out of each other every single match. Which, I mean, hey, I understand why the Romans enjoy the Colosseum, because we have the UFC. No one's dying, which is is good.
It's very good.
But so, and obviously another reason why I wanted you to have you on here is because I'm trying, at least during the summertime, trying to have fans of different fandoms besides just people to come up here and talk about blanket basketball topics. I want to learn about fan bases and their perspective of just their teams also. So, like, again, in last week's episode, which if you missed, go check it out. Amazing episode. Shea Media, one of the big Twitter leaders in spaces for the Oklahoma City Thunder. So that was the big reason why I wanted to have him on, was because I wanted to learn more about the Oklahoma City Thunder. You are a Detroit Pistons guy. Now, are you just a Pistons guy for basketball, or are you like a Detroit area sports guy?
I am. So I follow pretty much all Detroit sports, and I'm a big
Okay.
Michigan fan. Not as much into hockey, but I am a Michigan fan, and I'm a Detroit Pistons fan. So those are my big two basketball wise. But sometimes with the Pistons, sometimes the Pistons, you gotta find another team to root for while you're waiting for them to build up. But at heart, I am a big Detroit Pistons fan.
Okay. Have you been a Pistons fan like your entire life? So,
Yeah.
okay. So, would you, are you too young for like the Chauncey Billup, Ben Wallace days? Is that kind of like when you were starting to watch
Yeah.
basketball? Okay.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit younger than that because I was born in '01, and then they won the chip in '04, and then obviously
Yeah.
they hung around after that. But I think I started watching basketball in the early Andre Drummond era, and maybe a little
Mm,
bit earlier than that. I remember when they had Greg Monroe, Greg Jennings, guys like that, Rodney
yeah.
Stuckey, even guys like that. Guys like that. That was my big introduction into being a Pistons fan.
Yeah, man, that's the era when I really started to watch basketball like religiously. But I
Mhm,
do have a good high school friend. He's all Detroit sports, everything. And so yeah, even 2004, little young Jackson, what would I have been? I would have been 9 at the time. I was born in
mhm.
95.
Yep.
So 9, yeah, 8, 9, 10 years old, somewhere around in there. Yeah, I remember him being super excited when the Pistons won, because I went over to his house, and he had a bunch of jerseys up, and he had a bunch of memorabilia from you could like go online really quickly. They had the
Mhm.
commercials. It's like Detroit Pistons fans, your team has won the NBA title. Like those really old like infomercials that
Oh,
they,
yeah.
they still kind of hang around. Some like I saw one while I was
Yep.
watching some summer league games yesterday, and I couldn't believe it. I hadn't seen one of those like pay now, two payments of 9.95, whatever, stuff like that, like the Billy Mays type stuff
Yeah.
from
In
back in the day.
Michigan in Michigan, they've had the Miguel Cabrera 3000s hit, and they've had a memorabilia bat. So that has been going around in all the Michigan channels
Yeah.
as of recently.
Um, but yeah, I still remember a little bit of those days, the Chauncey
Mhm.
Billups, Ben Wallace era. And shout out, by the way, there is a bit of a Detroit Piston legend connection and the Memphis Grizzlies. Tayshaun Prince, one
Yep.
of the most beloved Detroit Pistons. He is in the front office with the Grizzlies, and he has been a key part of this rebuild, along with Zach Kleiman, the general manager, president, VP of basketball operations. They got like 5 different titles, but they're all the general
Yeah.
manager. Different name, but same. They do the same thing. But yeah, Tayshaun, massive impact on the Grizz front office. He's
Yeah.
the as I as far as I understand, he was really big in drafting Desmond Bain.
Mhm.
That was his guy that he was going for. Zaire Williams was a big guy that was or was a big Tayshaun guy. Kind of plays a little bit like Tayshaun too, which Tayshaun actually played for the Grizzlies too, which I think
Yep.
is just really funny. But happy to have his basketball knowledge, and happy to have that little bit of a Pistons connection,
Mm.
because the Pistons, man, they made some moves to
Oh, yeah.
start this off season. Now, there's a big inside joke with Vendetta Sports Media. And sorry, Chick, I got to bring this up. Where Chick, I think it was like 2 years ago, he made some sort of comment, or he wrote something in an article that talked about how like Detroit was going to be a big free agent destination, like max free agent destination. So that was something we always kind of nagged on a little bit. But now, after the draft, he may not be crazy. Maybe we were just blinded by our hubris and he could see into the future, because the Pistons had one heck of a draft. So I think a lot of people were surprised. Now, you had the Pistons in our mock draft, and I totally meant to bring this up
Mhm.
before we got to the segment so that way I could look and see who you pick. Who did you
Yeah.
pick for the Pistons in the mock draft at 5?
I went with Benedict Mathurin, and I think it got a little bit of a ooh at first. But Jaden Ivey was off the board, so I was pretty much
Mhm.
picking between Keegan Murray, Benedict Mathurin, and Shade and Sharp maybe, but I was never really sold on him and didn't really plan on picking him. But Jaden Ivey is obviously the pick. If I was sitting there at 5 with Jaden Ivey on the board, Jaden Ivey's coming off the
Yeah.
board.
And no one would have blamed you for thinking in your draft like, oh, Jaden Ivey's not going to be there. And I mean, Benedict Mathurin, outstanding player,
Yeah,
actually went sixth to the Pacers. So you were pretty much spot on where you thought he was probably going to go or what his worth was to NBA teams. But in real life, there's always picks that happen that always confuse some of us. And not to say that this is a bad pick by the Kings, but the Kings decided to go with Keegan Murray instead of Jaden Ivey. And so I could just already feel when I'm watching the draft, hadn't even looked at my phone yet, and I could already just feel the explosion of joy from Pistons fandom. Just that you guys, we got him. Jaden Ivey is coming to Detroit, and that's exactly who Detroit picks. Easy pick right
yeah.
here. Absolutely easy pick.
And when that happened, it's no disrespect to Keegan Murray because I think he's going to be a very good player in the NBA. But I think Jaden Ivey just has a different level of top tier potential, and that is what makes me so high on him. And I think that's what makes a lot of Pistons fans high on him as well. And when, like you said, there was just an aura of excitement. I mean, I came out of my chair when the Kings took Murray, and I'm sitting there going, all right, don't trade the pick. Take him, take him. We got him, take him. So, and it's the fit with Cade that I really like. Because when you put those two in a backcourt, you have, two guys who are Cade's bigger than people realize. I think he's like 6'7", and Ivey's 6'4", so you have length at that position. And Jaden Ivey is really just the opposite of Cade in a lot of ways, where he's a lot quicker, he's a lot more explosive. He probably doesn't, he's not a tremendous shooter, but he does a lot of things that you still want out of your backcourt. And I think that is a 1-2 punch that they'll have for a long time that can do a lot of good things. And Ivy has shown a lot in the summer league too. That makes me
Mhm.
believe that these two will be able to play together. These two will do well. So I'm very excited. I can't be more excited really as a Pistons fan. So I think Ivy is the perfect pick, and the Pistons really just got lucky where a perfect player fell to a great situation. And that's why the Kings didn't take him, because the situation wasn't right. The situation was right in Detroit, and I think that is perfect for them at this stage in the rebuild.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Ivy is the perfect pick for where the Pistons are trying to do right now. It's going to be an electric backcourt. I honestly
Oh
can't
yeah.
wait. And I've said this before, and we'll talk about it. We'll get in a little bit more detail too in your feelings about the addition of Jalen Duren on draft
Hmm.
night as well. But this team, to me, has shot up the ranks of my my league pass watch team.
Hmm.
Those are teams that are like um there may not be necessarily competitive for a title or anything, but they're just a young, fun team to watch that is going to be uh good in the future. I don't know why I need to fix that banner. Oh well. It kind of took me my train of thought off. I just saw the banner pop up right there. Sorry everybody. We're keeping that in. That stays in. uh but in Ivy, I gotten to see a little bit of him in summer league. He just looks comfortable
Yep.
right now. It looks like he's just having fun out there, and that just shows great. You want players when they're coming into the league to have that type of confidence. Like John Morant's been getting clowned mostly because
Mhm.
of a fake quote from a from a parody account that
Yeah.
ESPN just goes to show you that they do not check on their facts and their quotes, because they quoted a Taylor Rooks Bleacher Report interview, and she's like, "That didn't happen."
Yeah.
So,
It was
so
tough. It
it
was
was a
really tough.
tough look for ESPN on that one for
Mhm.
sure. Those interns are going to be looking for new jobs. See, we get good interns
That's right.
over
That's
here
right.
at Vendetta. It's the rejected Vendetta ones that get hired by ESPN, and then they pull stuff like that.
Yeah,
So
it's ridiculous. We
it's
can't have
crazy,
it.
absolutely crazy. But already mentioned it, but an odd situation, very confusing. The draft was pretty tame up
Mhm.
until we get to the 13th pick, which was originally the Hornets pick, which poor Cervantes, I think he was a lot more excited about, Jalen Duren falling,
Mhm.
because I was confused as to why Duren was falling as much as he did. There were some big surprises that jumped up in front of him. Definitely would have thought he would have went 9 to the Spurs,
Yep.
even to the Wizards at 10. I would have thought, to get them some interior protection, but instead he falls to 13, and there's this weird trade that happens where we had Shams and Woj tweeting two different things, that
Clashing.
Duren's going to New York, Duren's going to Detroit. What is it? What is it? Where is he going? Turns out he actually he went to New York. So he was traded from the
Mhm.
Hornets to New York, but then was traded to Detroit in a salary dump to get off of Kemba Walker's contract. So that way the Knicks can make room, because apparently they had already agreed with Jalen Brunson on a contract. So heavy tampering
Mhm.
there. But Detroit really gave up nothing for
Yeah.
another potential cornerstone of the core that they're building.
It was that was probably the best decision that they've made in terms of this whole rebuild and how they went about getting Jalen Duren. They've obviously done some great things, but drafting Cade, that comes to you pretty easily. Ivey at 5, you didn't really have to do much there. Had great picks with Sadiq and Beef Stew at 16 and 19, I think they went.
Mhm.
But pulling off this deal was a great move for them. And when you look at the big piece they gave up to get Duren, it was the 2025 first round pick that they got back in return for trading Jeremy Grant. So at the time of that Jeremy Grant trade, I'm sitting there and I'm going, we didn't really get a lot
Yeah.
back. It was rumored that we were going to get 7 from Portland. I was interested in that, but I really had to suspend belief because I wasn't sold that that was going to happen. But we end up not getting the first rounder this year, but we're able to work some magic and we're able to take some salaries and get that first round pick. And Jalen Duren's a great player, and he fits into this Detroit team so well. I mean, just looking at the first possession that he was on the court in summer league, they go Killian Hayes to Jaden Ivey to Oop to Jalen Duren. I mean, his athleticism has just jumped off the charts in summer league. Ivy's looked great too, obviously, but Jalen Duren's athleticism he's only 18. He doesn't turn 19 until November, and he is just an athletic specimen. He finishes really. He only shoots mostly dunks, and which is fine, but he has just athletically shown out, finishing at the rim, catching oops, playing good defense. If he can build any sort of offensive profile outside of 2 feet of the basket, he's going to be lethal because he's already very, very good on the defensive end.
Yeah, it's the potential that you have in Duren is astronomically insane.
Hmm.
Um, at what you have right now is an excellent rim protector, rim runner, pick and roll guy who will work wonders with Cade. I
Hmm.
honestly, I am, when I say I'm not a Pistons fan, I mean like fanatic, like I am,
Yeah, yeah.
Grizzlies. But I've always had a soft spot for the Pistons because of my good friend from high school. But and to see them on the come up right now, it makes me feel good inside. But I cannot wait to see all these pieces on the court together. I
Yep.
pray that they stay healthy. I pray that there is no injuries, which I always pray that for everybody, for every
Hmm.
NBA season, because I want the best product. I want to see the best players play.
Exactly.
But it's going to be so awesome to see Cade, Ivy in that pick and roll, in that situation with Duren, and to see him running from basket to basket, I cannot. It's going to be insane to see. And like you said, if he is able to expand his game a little bit to 5, 10, 15 feet from the basket, then just the world opens up for him and for the Pistons offense. It could he would almost be unstoppable. He's like 7 foot tall. I
Yeah.
mean, he's an absolute unit of a man. He is ripped. And like you said, he's only 18. That's the
Mhm.
craziest thing
The f-
about
the
all of this.
his floor at 18 years old is what really impresses me. Because obviously we can say these what ifs about a lot of guys who are athletic, but
Mhm.
his floor for
No, his
being that
floor is
age
already up
is,
here.
yeah, very high floor for a young prospect at 18 years old. Where I don't think he's going to be a bad player at any point in his career. At a minimum, he will be a starting caliber player. I don't think he'll ever be bad or anything like that. And like you mentioned, if he can develop anything outside of 5 feet, he's going to be very good. And that's where another Pistons player that I've been impressed with is Isaiah Stewart,
Mhm.
because he's kind of been with drafting Duren. It's like, if Duren's the future five, that puts Beef Stew at, a backup five or a role like that. But he has come in and they've talked about him playing the four a little bit, and he shot really well in these first couple summer league games. I don't think he shot as well in the second game, but in the first game, I think he went 3 for 4, and two of those were in the last 2 minutes of the first game. And I mean, if he can develop at all, they're going to be very good. If they can have someone like him who's that physical and be able to help them space the floor a little bit, because that's the one concern. Are you going to be able to space the floor with Cade, with Ivey, with Jalen Duren? Because Cade and Ivey, good shooters, but they're not locked down. They're not
Yeah.
40% guys. So if you can get someone like Beef Stew to space the floor too, that would really help them as an overall offense. And I think that is a real possibility at this point.
Mhm. It's a great building block. It's a great next step for what Detroit is trying to do.
Mhm.
And like you said, when you've got, I think the next evolution of this rebuild is to continue to put shooters around. You've got your backcourt in Cade and Ivy now. That's established. Now
Mhm.
they're going to be electric. They're going to be able to. They're both bucket getters, so they're both going to be able to create their own shot. You're going to have two guys that you can trust late in game to get buckets. But you also need to be able to have players on the wings and the corners, and you kind of have that in Sadiq Bey already, who dropped
Mhm.
the oddest 50 piece. That just it was like the quietest 50 piece. It's like he dropped
Yeah.
50 and then no one said anything. So I feel kind of bad for Sadiq Bey, but I enjoyed Sadiq Bey coming out of college, and
Yeah.
I thought it was a great pick, and I thought whoever got him was going to get a great pick, and
Yeah.
the Pistons got him.
Fun
Um,
fact about Sadiq Bey, I don't know if you saw this, but apparently he was such a hard worker that the Pistons were like, "Hey man, you need to
I
develop
saw that.
another hobby outside of basketball." So he said, "Okay, I'm going to move to the mountains, and my hobby is hiking." So he's like, "I'm
Yeah,
doing this, and I'm going to be in the best shape of my life." So that was his hobby, was I'm going to hike so I can be in ridiculous shape.
you you love to see that. You honestly do, because that
Mhm.
shows me as just a lover of the game, you as a fan, everyone else out there, that Detroit, the culture that Detroit is building, they're doing it the right way. And the culture is the most important thing. You want to get guys in there that not just want to be there, but they want to be better, and they want to do it where they are at. It's if I can bring it back to Memphis for a second, John Morant he signed his rookie extension, but that final year is not a player option.
Yep.
It's a sixth year. So he's locked in 6 more years with Memphis. None of this, you got 5 years to build a contender. And if I don't like what's going on, then I'm a leave. I'm a bouncer. I'm a demand a trade. He's signed in for the long haul. And Memphis they're trying to get players like that have that same mentality, keep bringing them in, and they kind of do. Desmond Bain is that same type of guy. Dylan Brooks has been that type of guy, because he's already had one re-up on his contract. He's coming up on another one. But those are the type of guys that you want in the locker room, and I think Sadiq Bey, as you have pointed out, is definitely that type of guy. And again, I cannot wait to see this Pistons team in action. Do you have any type of way too early prediction for the season, like standing
Mm.
wise? What are you feeling with how the East is? Because the East is better than what it used to be, but it's
Mhm.
not going like Cold War arms race like the West is
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah, and the West, like you said, is an arms race, and the East is not as good as the West. And with some other guys on the move, you don't really know exactly what these teams are going to be at. You don't know what the Nets are going to be.
Mhm.
You don't know if Mitchell gets moved to the East. There's some moving parts, but right now, I think they could possibly squeak into the play-in on the lower end of that play-in. I think it all depends on how they are first year. But for a hot take, I think that I think that Jaden Ivey will win the Rookie of the Year. That's my hot take from what I saw from him. I don't know how hot of a take that is. I don't, he's not the favorite. Um, Favorites are obviously Chet and Banchero, but I think
Mhm.
Ivy could get that if he's able to get the volume. I think he can score 20 plus points per game, and if that team is good at all, I think they could possibly squeak into that plan. But it's the first year of that, so even if they suck this year, it's fine, as long as they're showing strides of we can be good next year. Because if you look at what they did this offseason, a lot of the guys they had a lot of cap space, and a lot of the guys they added were 1 year, whether that be Burks, Nerlens Noel. We took Kemba Walker's salary. A lot of the guys we added were 1 year. So we're going to have a lot of salary cap space this offseason. So this year, I think it's just about we're going to see what we have. We're going to give these young guys the opportunity, and we're going to see what we have, and we can figure out what we need to add next offseason. So I think that's probably the key of this year for them.
I could see the Pistons making it as the 10th seed.
Mhm.
I think that might kind of be their ceiling. Now, just looking at the standings from last year, it means that they would have to be just above 500 to do it. But I do think they have gotten a little bit better. And again, like you said, there could be some moving parts out of the East or into the East, but it's all kind of depending on where those pieces move to
Yep.
and where they go. Um, but I think they could be competitive for that, and I think that's their ceiling is the 10th seed. I don't think they're going to surprise people and get the ninth seed or even the 8th seed. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. Clip this, and if I'm wrong, then I will take the ire of Pistons fandom. I did it once for the Hawks. Hawks fans, really hating on me, but the Hawks weren't that great this past year, so who got the last time. I tried to show them love going into this season, and this is how they repay me. So it's
Yeah.
just it's whatever.
And nowadays getting the 10 seed isn't like you're not like, oh, we got the 10 and we
Yeah,
made the playoffs. It's really not that big of a deal because there's 14 teams saying, oh, we got 10th in the regular season. It's not really, it's not
yeah,
groundbreaking. So
yeah. You were good enough to not suck, but you
yeah,
weren't good enough to make the playoffs, and
exactly.
we still haven't gotten a situation yet where a 10th seed goes on a 2-game tear
Yeah.
and gets the 8th seed.
Mhm.
Who knows? Maybe that changes in the future. Um, Realistically, I think the Pistons fall probably in the 11 to 12 spot. I think they get over 30 wins this season. I think the additions that they've made, I think the young core that they have is good for at least 8 or 9 more wins than what they got last season, which is they finished the season 23 and 59. So probably in that 31 to 35 win range. Which there have been years in the past where the East has been so bad that the 7th seed had a sub 500 record and
Mhm.
got in. So you never know
Yeah,
what's
exactly.
what's going to happen. But there are some teams out east that are young and they're getting better. The Cavs are one of those teams to look at. If the Nets do something, obviously, yeah, they could fall drastically, which they were just the 7th seed. Hornets, I think, took kind of a step back this
Very
year.
They're in a weird spot where I could see them improving, but then you've got the Bridges situation
Mhm.
that's going to cost them some games from a pure who's on the court. That's going to cost them some games in the standing. So, you know, I do like the Cavs and the Hornets have a good young core, but So I think teams like that could beat the Pistons out, but I don't think they're going to absolutely suck unless they decide, hey, we're going to try and, we got a couple injury scares. We're going to pull the Thunder and, sit guys for 40 games. You don't know how many you lose in that scenario.
Yeah. But I mean, regardless, whatever happens, Pistons fans shouldn't worry too
Yep.
much. Just
Yep.
enjoy the season. Just pay attention game to game.
Mm-hmm.
What is the differences when Ivy? What is Ivy doing in game 60 that's different than game one?
Yep.
Like you want to be able to see. You want to be able to visually see improvements, decision making, shot selection. You want to see that improve because it's going to be difficult
Mm-hmm.
at the next stage because he's doing pretty well in summer league right now, but that's mostly G leaguers and bench guys. When
Yep.
he is going to be rolling out there, he's going to be a starter and he's going to be going up against the best NBA player or the best basketball players in the world. Sometimes he is going to be playing against title contending starting lineups,
Exactly.
and those are going to be the games where you want to see the improvement. But I think they can do it. I think they can. I again think something special is being built in Detroit, and who knows, maybe they do turn out to be that max contract free agent destination. And Chick can stand up there at the podium with them when they win a title in 5 years and
He
laugh at all
may
of us.
we may just land a max guy in 3 years when we're one player away. They may throw a max on someone, and any team in the NBA can get a player, no matter how crappy of a city it is or how low of a
Yeah,
destination it is. If you're 1 star away, someone will come and chase that championship.
exactly. So, man, I'm so happy we got to talk about the Pistons.
Yeah, fun
I,
team,
I
fun team.
they are a fun team. Again, man, I am going to be paying a lot of attention to the Pistons this year. I'm going to be watching a ton of their games. Obviously, if they're playing the same time as the Grizzlies take precedent.
And that's fair.
Which I mean, I'd understand it the same if you're in the situation. You like watching the Grizzlies, but the
Exactly.
Pistons are on, and it's like, I got to watch the Pistons. Like, hey, I get it. But I have gotten to see the Pistons a lot in live because they have not been the greatest in recent years. So my wife and I, whenever we want to sit really close to the court, then the Pistons game is usually the one that we go to. There was one a few years ago. It was back when JB Bickerstaff was the head coach of Memphis. Shout out to him, doing great things in Cleveland.
Mhm.
I got to sit 2 rows behind the Grizzlies bench,
That is
and
sweet.
it was one of the most fun games I've ever been to because you could hear Bickerstaff swearing and cursing the players and just all the banter going back and forth between everyone. It was a lot of fun. Um, and of course, like Blake Griffin, this was back in the Blake Griffin day. So, he was like 10, 15 feet away from me. I could, see everything going on there, but that was a lot of fun. And I've been to a couple Pistons games just because, again, the tickets were kind of cheap, but,
Yeah.
um,
The
I,
Pistons always have like one or two cool guys. Where you're like, oh, I get to see Blake Griffin, or we had Derrick
yeah.
Rose
And,
for
and,
some time.
and this was when Blake Griffin wasn't terrible either.
Hmm.
He was doing really well. Is the thing. And it was that same game too. It was the season where Christian Wood had like his breakout
Oh,
season. So I'm like, who is this Christian Wood guy? He's dropping like 25, 30 points on the Grizzlies. I'm like, I have no idea who this guy is. And he's just absolutely balling out there.
ridiculous. And they didn't sign him. I don't know if it was that offseason or if he had another year after that breakout year, but they let him walk after that. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, come on.
Yeah, I think he had one more year, and
Hmm.
that's when he signed with Houston, and then Houston
Yeah.
traded him to Dallas, which should be interesting.
Interesting.
Um, so we'll get to some other NBA, just more general NBA talk. And James, we kind of talked about this a little bit before we started the podcast,
Mhm.
but the Rudy Gobert trade. I want your reactions to the Rudy Gobert trade, and for those of you that do not remember the haul that the Jazz received for this. It's a long list, so bear with me here. In return for sending Rudy Gobert to the Minnesota Timberwolves, the Utah Jazz receive Malik Beasley, Patrick Beverly, a Leonardo Bolmaro. I have no idea who that guy is. Probably just a European player whose contract that they own.
Yep.
Um, Walker Kessler, the number 22 pick in this year's draft. Jared Vanderbilt, who was really good in the playoff series against the Grizzlies. I am surprised that Minnesota was willing to part ways with him. And 5 first round picks, 2023 first round pick, 2025 first round pick, 2026 pick swap, 2027 first round pick, and 2029 first round pick, all of which are unprotected first round picks.
Yeah, it's not
Wow.
bad. And then you hear 5 first round picks. When you hear 5 first round picks, it's like, oh.
And just the
Because I personally, I don't idea of sending 5 first round picks in just about any trade. I just don't think it's worth mortgaging your future for a player, one singular player. I don't think that that is a good idea in the majority of situations. Obviously, there are some few and far in between scenarios where you could justify that, but I don't feel like Rudy Gobert is that situation where you can justify that if you're the Timberwolves. If you're the Timberwolves, I get why adding a center that is a very good rim protector is appealing to you, but when you now have this situation of, is Cat going to play the 4? How are we going to run Cat at the 4 and 5 at the same time? How are we going to manage that? That's one interesting thing, and then you have to consider how much you're paying him on top of that. I just feel like, could Rudy Gobert in Minnesota work? I think it could, but I don't think that it's worth the risk that they're taking for it to work.
I 100% agree because is Minnesota going to be competing for a title in 2027 or 2029? Or are they going to be is that going to be lottery teams? Or is there, those going to be lottery picks? And my feeling, my gut instinct is it's going to be lottery picks because like in the now, maybe it pushes the needle a little bit, but not for a championship. Absolutely not for a championship. And if you're giving up this haul to still not win a championship, then
Hmm.
what's the point of making the trade for this price tag? If this was for Kevin Durant, I could understand it slightly more. Okay.
Hmm.
I would still say, holy crap, that is a lot of picks that you just gave up for one player. But at the same time, it's Kevin Durant, and you would be pairing Kevin Durant up with Cat, D'Angelo Russell, and Anthony Edwards, and I would be like, okay, that's pretty scary. That's a pretty scary lineup. That's a
Hmm.
win now move, definitely. This is also a win now move, but it's I don't think it results in a win now situation. If by win now you mean getting the highest seed since Kevin Durant was on the or not Kevin Durant, Kevin Garnett was on the roster and actually winning a playoff series since Kevin Garnett was a Timberwolf, then if that's your definition of winning, congratulations, you probably did that. But
And you don't have to do that right now either.
no,
You can reevaluate the situation after this year, because I personally, I really like Anthony Edwards. I think he's going to be a
yes,
good player, and you're limiting future cap flexibility while Gobert's on the roster, and you're not going to have much to trade. I mean, look at the Lakers gave up a lot for Anthony Davis, and that's kind of affecting their current trade situation to get Westbrook off that roster to add another piece for this year. And you don't really want to go through that same, limited flexibility situation. They kind of handcuff themselves for a long time when in 3 years, when you have a prime Anthony Edwards, they could legitimately be a championship contender, but you're left going, how do we make a move now?
so Rudy Gobert, his contract runs until the 2025-2026 season, which is a player option. This season, he's owed $38 million. For 2023-24, he's owed 41 million. Next the season after that, 43 million. Final year player option of 46.6 million dollars.
And how long of that is he going to be good? Because you see centers in the, I think, okay, Rudy Gobert is better than a lot of the guys I'm about to mention, but look at how fast people like Andre Drummond has fell off a cliff. And that archetype of player, athletic rim protector, guys like that typically don't have a lot of longevity. I think Rudy Gobert is better than a lot of those guys, whether it be Dwight Howard, Andre Drummond, anybody. I think that he has a longer shelf life than some of those guys, but still, at some point, he's not going to be worth that money. And you could say it's right now, but in 2 years, that could look even worse than it does now.
And it adds on to it because he's 30 years old
Mm-hmm.
right now, and he's already been played off the court in playoff games. So in this trade, what they sacrificed, what gave them a fighting chance against Memphis, was their length and their depth. That's what helped. Vanderbilt was key. Like I said, Patrick Beverly, he made Ja a little uncomfortable in some instances. Him and Ja kept going back and forth the whole time. But you sacrifice some of that. And of course, you leverage your entire future because you can't trade the picks that you didn't trade unless you acquire more first round picks. I forget the name of what the rule is, but the rule was implemented because of the Nets trade that happened where you, excuse me, can't trade back to back first round picks or multiple first round picks in like back to back years. So they couldn't trade like 24, 25, 26, and 27, get it over with. No, they have
Yep.
to spread it out. So that way idiot GMs won't trade away the entire future
Mm-hmm.
of a franchise. I do not see this ending well either this season because again, Gobert was nearly unplayable at the end of the Jazz playoff series this season.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing is going to happen just the older he gets and the more teams figure this team out how to play against them, it's going to end in disaster.
It's
And
it's only going to get worse from today forward. It's only getting worse. And the way I view Gobert almost is he is almost like he will get you a good spot in the playoffs. He will lead you to a lot of wins in the regular season because he's not going to get played off the court as much in the regular season. It just doesn't happen as much during those games. But you're making this move to win a championship at the end of the day, not to get a high seed. And I still don't even know if they're going to be a top 4 seed in the West. But that's just the way I view Gobert as a player that can lead you and help you win games in the regular season. But I'm not sure that he is someone where you can go, all right, we got Rudy Gobert, that wins us a chip.
not with the way that this roster is currently constructed. And
Mm-hmm.
again, they sacrificed a lot. They sacrificed some depth to get here. Malik Beasley, Patrick Beverly, Jared Vanderbilt. That's a lot. And then Walker Kessler, even though as a rookie coming in, that is more depth that was sacrificed. And any future depth
Mm-hmm.
that you could have has pretty much been sacrificed to the trade gods. And to kind of roll into that, another Utah Jazz player that could potentially be on the move. News has come out today that Donovan Mitchell could potentially be traded. The Jazz are now listening to offers. They were like, "Hey, if it's about Mitchell, we don't want to hear it." Now they're like, "Okay, we will hear your offers." The potential landing spots for him, the two favorite spots is New York and Miami. But I think because of this Gobert trade, I think at least initially it has broken the trade market. Like if Gobert got this much, what is Donovan Mitchell worth? What is Kevin Durant worth? What is Kyrie Irving worth? What is any player worth now?
Yeah, I 100% agree to that because now if you're Brooklyn or if you're the Jazz, you sit there and the moment you make this trade, if you get less than what the Jazz got for Rudy Gobert, it's like, oh, you know, it's hard to justify a trade where you're getting lesser of a return for a guy like Mitchell in comparison to a guy um like Gobert. So I think that really almost handcuffs teams, and you're kind of waiting for someone. You're waiting for someone to be that team that's willing to reset that market and go back down. But until I mean, I don't know exactly how those negotiations are going to go, but I can't imagine it's pretty. If you're talking to a team right now to trade for any high caliber player or any all star player.
Yeah, and I think if any trade does kind of reset the market, I think it would be a Kyrie trade, just
Hmm.
because it seems like both parties, Kyrie and Brooklyn, want a divorce. So that's where I could see it. And a lot of from what I've seen, people are like league analysts are saying if the Lakers would just throw in an extra first round pick to make it two first round picks instead of just one in a potential deal, then the Nets would definitely say yes. So I think that might be the undersell. I'm not if that's even correct to say that about
Yeah.
Kyrie Irving in that situation. That could correct the market a little bit. But as far as like Mitchell to anywhere, I feel like if he gets traded anywhere, then the similar thing is going to happen. They're going to leverage their future, sacrifice it, and have to sacrifice a lot of depth to add them. Not just that too, but it's like other teams that want these players, they can kind of wait to go in for trades because there is no demand necessarily from well, obviously Kevin Durant did demand a trade, and Donovan
Hmm.
Mitchell. We don't know what's really going on behind the scenes, but both of those guys still have a lot of time left on their contracts.
Yep.
So you can teams can wait, and those teams can obviously wait a little bit. Also, although while the market's high, they're probably going to try to want to move off those assets. That's economics 101. You got an asset, and the price of it shoots through the roof. You want to
Yep.
sell at the top, so that way you get your max value out of it. But the rest of the league, I think, will help bring that down a little bit, at least for
Yeah.
some of these star players, because again, the Gobert trade just absolutely set the market parabolic upwards in the worst way possible
Hmm.
for some of these teams to make it where there are some teams that might have been in contention for it, but now it's like we can't make this trade without sacrificing the now and the future. So
Yep.
what's even the point?
And when you look at trades like that where you're giving up too many first round picks, the reason the Lakers are hesitant, I'm obviously saying this is not a part of the Lakers organization, but if the Lakers wouldn't have traded all those first round picks for Anthony Davis, I imagine they'd be a little bit more willing to toss in a second
Mhm.
right now to go get Kyrie Irving. And that's kind of the point of when you're trading for a guy like Gobert and you're giving up all those picks. You can see the situation the Lakers are in now where you can get Kyrie Irving, we just need another first round pick, and you just don't have that level of flexibility to go make that move because of the decisions you've made in the past. So if you're a team looking at adding Donovan Mitchell or Kevin Durant, you're kind of looking at that going, I don't really want to be sitting in that position in 2 years or 3 years. I think with Donovan Mitchell, it's a little bit less of a worry because I think Donovan Mitchell isn't going to command the price of Durant, and he's a little bit younger. So if things go well, you could possibly re-sign him and get a longer shelf life out of Donovan Mitchell, so you wouldn't be in as bad of a situation. But when you're looking at like Durant's 34 or 35, I believe. And it's like, how many years are you going to get out of Durant? And I mean, he's obviously a great player and he can help you win now. But if you're giving up enough assets to, you could almost give up enough to take yourself out of title contention while he's on your roster,
Mhm.
you know? And it's like when the Sun, they were talking about the Suns sending Booker. It's like, I don't know if that's just hardball negotiation, but if Booker's not on that team, I don't think the Suns are winning a championship with Paul Ayton and Kevin Durant. So it's like you're almost paying so much to get him that you can't win in the now or
Mhm.
later because you're sacrificing both ends of that.
Exactly. I agree 100%. So, but only time will tell. We'll have to
Hmm.
wait and see. We still got a long summer to go on. And like I said, Kevin Durant still has like 4 years left on his contract, something like that, something of that nature, 3 years,
Yeah.
something like that. And then I don't know how many years Mitchell has, but I know he still has multiple years left over from his max extension
Yeah.
that he signed. But one more bit of NBA news, and then we'll do our final segment and close it out. Again, make sure to follow James on Twitter. I've been very bad at getting changing the scroll at the bottom. It's my first time using StreamYard, so bear with me, everybody. If you're watching, obviously, if you're listening on Spotify or you have it on YouTube and you're just like driving or just listening, then it doesn't really matter to you. But just some other big news, and by big, I mean like a player, a five, in Deandre Ayton, which is a player that your Detroit Pistons were rumored to be
Hmm.
involved with and signing and signing and trading for, but obviously trading for Jalen Duren kind of killed that, and I think was obviously like the better option when it was available, because younger player, get him cheaper for a longer extended period of time, and you can mold him to be the player that you want. So again, I think that was the better deal for them.
I agree.
But it's he rumored that Indiana is the potential landing spot for DeAndre Ayton. What are your thoughts about Indiana going out and doing a sign and trade, because that's the only way they could get him
Yep.
for Ayton?
I think it's really interesting. And at first, my initial reaction to when I saw this was, I don't like that for Indiana. But then I kind of thought about it a little bit more, and I like it a little bit more because Aiton is a little bit younger than people give him credit for. I think he's 24. So when you put his age in the Indiana Pacers timeline, I think it does make a little bit more sense, in the sense that you have Halliburton, you have Benedict Mathurin, who we talked about at the very beginning of this. I think he is a really good player, very good player that you can. He's not going to be your one, but I think he's a good 2 or 3 option on a championship level team in the future, obviously. And adding a good 5 can really help that. And I think the big thing here is, what are you giving up in that sign and trade? If you're just giving up Miles Turner, then you made a good move, in my opinion. You're upgrading from Turner to Ayton. You have to pay a little bit more salary, but I think Ayton's going to be on that team longer than Miles Turner. I think Miles Turner would leave in free agency, in comparison to Ayton. And from there, you can build a little bit more. You'd probably be 1 or 2 pieces away still, but I don't hate it entirely. For the Suns, getting Miles Turner is not a terrible option if you're looking at if you don't want Ayton back. I think Ayton's a good enough player to where they should invest in him. And once Chris Paul's contract is off the books, they wouldn't be in such a bad cap situation. But for now, I think Miles Turner is one of the better players that you can get in return in a sign and trade. So I don't really hate it from either sides. I don't think anyone is hitting it out of the park here, but I don't hate it like I initially kind of reacted once I thought about it a little bit more.
Yeah, it's very interesting what's going on in Indiana. I can't decide if I think they're on the right path or not. It's so weird, because it's like they're trying to rebuild but compete at the same time,
Yeah.
and that's pretty much even what their front office has said. It's like, oh, we want to sell everything and rebuild, but we want players that'll help us compete now. So it's like, can't have it both ways. You gotta go one way or the other.
Yeah.
But they are kind of treading that decently. They did have a surprise pick in how do you say his name? Is it Daughtry? I forget how to say
Chris Duarte.
Dorte. That's it. That's how you say it. See, terrible with last names, everybody. But yeah, he was a surprise pick last season. He did phenomenally well. I even want to say he was like in running for rookie of the year at one point. Like he was, for like a week or two, was the favorite and like at the top of everyone's picks. Obviously, he kind of fell off a little bit, but I think, if I remember correctly, that was like more due to injury than just his lack of stellar play. But I wouldn't hate the move on Indiana's perspective. It's again, what are you giving up? Because if it is Miles Turner, and I'd imagine maybe another player to make salaries match,
Yeah.
and picks, it depends on the number of picks that you're giving up.
Yep. If
But
you're just throwing seconds in there, you'll be fine. But if you're throwing in some firsts, then I'd really
yeah,
get hesitant if I'm Indiana.
yeah, and see, that's the thing though. It's like sign and trades are so odd, because it's like DeAndre Ayton could, and I've never seen a player do this, and would definitely be interesting to see them do it. He could just sign the qualifying offer and say, "I'm gonna walk next year,"
Yeah. He
and
could.
it's like, find me a better place to go to, or I'm just gonna walk, and then I'm gonna hang this over everyone's head that if I don't like where I'm traded to, I'm just gonna walk, because I'm an unrestricted free agent next
Yeah.
season. I'm gonna ball because I want that big contract, and I think he does fall into, like, he could be worth $100 million contract if he's in the right situation, and I
Yeah.
think Phoenix is that right situation
I agree.
for him, but but I think Indiana would definitely be an interesting situation to see him in. I'd have to think on it a little bit more about, if I'm Indiana, what do I give up? What's worth it? Do I think like it could work if they're running out Matherin, um, Halliburton, who I love Halliburton, which
Hmm.
that was another weird trade last year. The Sabonis
Yep,
Halliburton trade was the oddest trade to ever happen in my
I agree.
lifetime. Um, but it would definitely be interesting, and I would definitely have to pay a little bit more attention to what Indiana is doing out there if they do make this move. But I think who wins, it's not necessarily if Aiton does go to Indiana, then it's a win. It's like what's being given up.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
guess like and it could end up being a win-win if it's like a good haul for Aiton and Aiton turns into that guy and the Pacers make the playoffs. They're
Hmm.
not hovering around. Let me see where they finished at last season. Yeah, they finished 13th last season. But if they're close to that play in and they're like a player or so away, and maybe you put some protections on
Yeah,
that
protect.
first round pick,
If
like
you're sending first for Aiton, they have to be protected, in my opinion,
exactly,
because it could blow up in your face very quickly.
exactly. So because I don't think the trade does get done without at least one first round pick. But if you make it like lottery protected next year, then like top 10 protected that next year, and
Hmm.
then maybe it turns into an unprotected pick, then that gives you that safety net where we still need like a couple more years to build up and get players to really solidify this roster. Then you're able to do that through the draft because you're falling into the lottery and you continue to get lottery picks. And then that next year, that's the gamble, that's the due date for that pick. And then maybe it doesn't matter because maybe you're making the playoffs, maybe you're at least in the play in, maybe you're that 8th seed, 7th seed, whatever, and you're at least competing in the playoffs. And then it doesn't hurt as bad that you lost the pick because you have a playoff roster.
And I don't think you have to give up as much in a normal trade just because it's a sign and trade. And if the Suns are really hesitant to pay him the max, they may just take whatever they can get in return. That's one of those things where
Mhm.
if it's a sign and trade and they really don't want him, it's a lot better to get something than to let him walk. So it's interesting navigating what you can get for a player when you're doing a sign and trade.
Yeah. So, all right, James. So you said that you have watched some of the episodes in the past. So
Hmm.
we will conclude this episode, which again, thank you all so much for watching. We will conclude this episode of Court is in Session with our marquee segment, which is taking the stand. So, James, just to remind you, I am going to bring up a hot take. I don't know where the Bible has gone to that
Oh
I have.
man,
So it has been misplaced somewhere. It's probably on my bookshelf. That's
yeah.
right here, but it's nighttime and it's dark, and I really don't want to get up and find it. So
I don't blame you.
yeah, so we'll just go on. We'll move through with it here. But I really wasn't sure what to ask you, but I think you gave me a good one
Mhm,
earlier in the show. So I will throw this to you. And in case for everyone out there that doesn't know how this works, James, I will ask him a question, or basically, I will ask him to defend a take of his that he has. He takes the
mhm,
stand, he defends a player, a team, a take, whatever. The example that I always use is Trey's a big Westbrook hater, but there is some positives out there that the Westbrook defense team, like I talked about last week, again, go watch episode 3 with Shea Media. He's a big Westbrook guy, so he brought a lot of good pro Westbrook arguments to the table. And those are the
mhm,
same stuff that I would bring to Trey. And it's like, hey, this is all the good stuff Westbrook's done, but you hate Westbrook. Why do you hate Westbrook? Defend your take. So that's basically the premise of this.
mhm,
So, but James, you mentioned it earlier. You said that this is kind of a hot take, and I was really going to ask you what kind of hot takes you had NBA wise and let you go with it. But you said this hot take earlier, so we're going to rock with it. But you say that your boy Jaden Ivey is going to win the rookie of the year this season. And you
mhm.
you said that despite Chet and Benchero being the favorites, and yes, they 100% are the favorites. And I'll say
Yep.
about them, their advantage that they have over Ivy is that they are basically going to be the guys on their team. Now, obviously, Chet, maybe not
Mhm,
so much. They've got OKC has Shea or SGA, so they obviously have their number one guy, but he's going to be the number two guy on a team that is trying to find its identity, and there's a lot of high expectations for him. Banchero, Yeah, there's some dudes on Orlando. They got,
He's the number one
but
scoring option.
he's going to be the number one scoring option.
Mhm.
But he's going to have Cole Anthony as his point guard to give him the ball. He's going to have Wagner out there that'll kind of take the heat off of him a little bit. But Banchero is going to be their go-to scoring machine. And with Ivey in Detroit, he's going to have to be sharing the ball with Cade Cunningham,
Yep.
who is an excellent basketball player and was
Mhm.
in the running for Rookie of the Year. Him, Mobley, and LaMelo Ball. That was an interesting race, and I think that Cade, staying healthy probably. Wait, did he win it? No,
No,
LaMelo won it, right?
I think Scotty Barnes won
Scotty
it.
Barnes did. Okay, man, I should have looked that up before then. Oh well, I'm gonna leave that in there just to show that I'm not perfect. I
It
can't.
happens.
I gotta show that I'm human sometimes.
Exactly.
So, but anyway, Cade 100% in the running,
Mhm.
deserved to be in the running for Rookie of the Year. But there's also just some other rookies. He's gonna have
Yeah.
to find his way on this team. So, why do you think that Jaden Ivey is going to be the Rookie of the Year?
Yeah. So I think the one big thing that you already mentioned in terms of the counter argument is the volume. The volume, he's not going to be the number one. He won't take as many shots as some of these other guys. So I think that will be the biggest thing that he has to overcome. But from what I saw in the summer league, he is going to be very good at finding his role in this offense. And I think he'll find success early because of that. And I think a lot of that is going to come in transition. I think that Cade Cunningham in the half court is obviously a far better pure point guard, but I think that the Pistons may look to Ivy a lot in transition because he is a good passer from transition and he can push the pace himself with his speed. So I think he will find a lot of opportunities from an offensive standpoint early because of that transition skill that he has. So I think that will be an area where he can get some early buckets, get some assists. And those are obviously, when it comes to winning Rookie of the Year, you need the numbers. And then I think just from a readiness, I think he's very ready to come into the NBA and just put up numbers. I think he can drive to the hoop. And I think Cade Cunningham will help him where Cade is going to find him open shots. And if Jaden Ivey can hit some open threes, that points per game number is going to get a lot higher than some of those other aforementioned guys. So I just think that in that offense, that Pistons team should be better than the Magic and the Thunder as well. And if you can be better than those teams, I think that will help him edge out a close race, especially if they make the play in. If he's the number two option on a successful team with better numbers, I think that would be a good recipe to winning the Rookie of the Year. And I think there's a realistic chance that he can do those things.
I love it, man. I love it. I love the confidence in your boy there. But yeah, no, you make a lot of great and excellent points that I can't dispute. And the whole point of this is, I'm looking at it from both angles and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I think the biggest thing for Ivy, if it has shown anything in the past couple races, staying healthy is the number one key because a lot of
Yep.
the rookies, and this is just kind of a theory that I've had running for a few years now is by the time these players get to the NBA, yes, they're young. They're 18, 19, 20 years old, but they have been playing basketball nonstop since they were 14 with AAU, travel, high school. They've been playing basketball 300 days a year. And then that's just games. The other times they're practicing. So they literally have not had a time off since they're 14. So by the time they get to this point, their bodies are starting to already wear down a little bit.
Unless you're Shaden Sharp, then you've taken plenty of time off.
Man, Shaden Sharp he continues to catch strays on
Yeah,
every episode.
that's just a stray I had
Hey,
to throw. I
no,
like him, but
no,
that's what you
no.
get for sitting out of you.
Yeah. But so staying healthy definitely
Mhm.
is the key. And I love when you said that when you talk about how Cade is more of a pure point guard than what Ivy is, because everybody was comparing Ivy to Ja Morant coming out of
Mhm.
college, but Carl had this comparison, and I like it a ton better than Ja, despite Ja being that's my guy, is that he's more of a Donovan Mitchell than
Yeah.
he is a John Morant. And just imagine if Donovan Mitchell had an a really young, excellent point guard. Not like an aging point guard like Mike Conley has been, who was good in the year that they were the 1 seed and they made a pretty deep run in the playoffs, but someone that is a bit more of a shot creator also, which is what Cade is. Cade can find his own bucket. He's going to have gravity pulled to him, and that's going to give
Yep.
Ivey a lot of opportunities. So yeah, learn to become a knockdown shooter, but also to continue to stay aggressive when the ball's in his hands, because like I said, he's a pure bucket getter, and he's going to have the ball in his hands in late game situations. And I've got this feeling that he's cut from the same cloth as someone like a Ja Morant, which is why I think he got those comparisons.
I
Where
think mentally and his mentality, he's closer to Ja, but in a pure skill set, he's closer to someone like Donovan Mitchell. So I think that's where he draws the comparisons. Is in that mindset.
Yeah, I was going to say, but yes, I was going with the mentality thing where even with the skill set being more like Donovan Mitchell, he's going to be the dude where it's like tie game, 10 seconds left, there's no shot clock. Give me the ball. Everyone else just stay out of the way and let me do my thing.
And
that's the mentality that he has, and I think that's going to go a long way for him.
Yeah. And another thing that I didn't really mention, just another quick thing, he's probably going to be facing a lot of number 2 defenders. Your best perimeter defender will probably be on Cade. And if you're putting a number 2, your second guy on the perimeter with Jaden Ivey, there's a good chance he can have some more success driving. So that's just another thing for playing with Cade, like you mentioned, that will help him find success.
There's another excellent piece of evidence that you bring to the judge here today. But unfortunately, I need to get a gavel. I still want to get the gavel, like maybe when we get a bit bigger and, maybe I move somewhere and my son is not sleeping in the next room right next to me, I can get a gavel that I can hit on my table to say that the podcast is over. But anyway, guys, again, thank you so much for watching. James, thank you so much, man, for stopping by and joining the podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I'm happy to have you on here. I love bringing in people from outside Vendetta, but I also love having Vendetta people on here also, just so that way, never forget who we're associated with. You can see it right there in the top corner on my screen up here, which is probably the one that's going to be showing. But James, again, man, thank you so much for coming on. So happy to have you on. Look forward to maybe having you on again in the future sometime. Maybe who knows, maybe Detroit goes on a massive run and I got to have you back on. Like they get like 10, 12 wins. They're sitting at like 5th in the East. And it's like, I got to have James back on. We got to talk about this massive tear that they're going on. I would love nothing more than for that to happen.
Me too.
And then of course, the podcast when it's Grizzlies versus Pistons in the NBA finals, it's going to be that's going to be the daily podcast that we do. It's just going to be the two of us.
Yeah. Those are going to be watch parties. Those are going to be watch parties.
Definitely. But anyway, guys, thank you so much again for watching. If you are watching us on YouTube and you enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are not already subscribed. And if you do subscribe or you're already subscribed and you haven't done this yet, then go ahead and hit the notification bell so you can be notified whenever a new episode drops. This is Jackson Law from Vendetta Sports Media signing off, and I will see you guys next time.